Today we'll be looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and obviously there's no Bibles here, but that's okay because I actually have the verses on the slide, so just worked out very well. Okay, so the theme I'm going to be discussing from this chapter, if you don't already know, is the theme of idolatry. Now, I know if you were here last week, you may recall that Finley touched on the concept of idolatry. He touched on it. But this week we're really going to dive deeper into it, really get to the core of it. So, first day, what is idolatry exactly? This is what I found when I Googled what it means. As you can see, the top definition says what most of us would immediately think. Plain and simple, the worship of idols. However, idolatry goes far deeper than that. And I actually think the second definition is much better. It says, extreme admiration, love, or reverence for something or someone. I like how this definition phrases it. So often we'll think, I don't have idols in my life. I don't have figurines or statues or crystals, so I clearly don't worship anything other than God. Wrong. As the definition says, idolization can be for anything. If you have an intense love or admiration for a person, this can be a person you know or a person you don't know, like a celebrity. Or it can be for a thing. These things include romantic relationships, your body, food, money, success, fame, just to name a few. There's so much more. But don't worry, we're going to be diving deeper into these things when we look at our passage for today. Okay, so to give you a quick reminder, this is Paul's writing to the Corinthian church. Paul is advising them against their wrong ways of living and warning them of God's great wrath if they continue in these ways. In the passage we are about to read, Paul is using the Israelites' failure in the wilderness as an example to the Corinthians. So when you hear in the passages, when you see them or they, Paul is referring to the Israelites. Okay, so Corinthians 10, verse 6 to 10. Now these things become our examples, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. And do not become idolaters, as were some of them. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Nor let us commit sexual immorality, as some of them did. And in one day 23,000 fell. Nor let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted, and were destroyed by serpents. Nor complain, as some of them also complained, and were destroyed by the destroyer. Okay, so right here, in the words, we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. We see that Paul is telling the Corinthians what idolatry truly means. Paul is saying that by lusting over anything, you are making it an idol. At the time, the Corinthians believed that idolization was very literal, and literally referred to worshipping idols like figurines, statues, that kind of thing. But yeah, Paul reminds us that there's more to it than that. We also see that Paul says, nor let us commit sexual immorality. Paul knew that the Corinthians were struggling with their sexual desires. As a Christian, we know that we will still have temptations and desires, but we need to deny ourselves of these things. The Corinthians were not denying themselves of these sexual immoralities, and Paul warns them that if they continue to act on these things, they will encounter the wrath of God, just like the Israelites in the wilderness did. Like I mentioned in the beginning, sexual desires can also easily become an idol in your life. You may not even realize it, but if you're focusing on your boyfriend or your girlfriend more than you're focusing on Jesus, then chances are you're making him or her an idol in your life. If you're watching pornography or reading smart, and you're doing that more than you spend time with Jesus, and it's very difficult for you to stop, then you are idolizing those things. Now, I know the end of this passage may seem very scary. You may be thinking, if I'm struggling with idolization in my life, does that mean God is going to assert his wrath on me? Here is the blunt truth of the matter. All of us struggle to some degree with idolization in our lives. And sometimes we don't even realize it. It's so easy to get caught up in the things of this world. Things that seem very important because society has made them out to be. Things such as your school grades, which are important. I'm not saying don't care about them, but it's to a certain degree. Things such as your amount of followers on Instagram, your PB in running, or your PB in the gym. It's true. Things such as how much you weigh, or how many friends you have. These are just a few examples, but they're all things that are so easy to get caught up in. But don't worry, Paul provides us with a sense of comfort in the next passage. And this is actually one of my absolute favorite verses. It says, "No temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful. He will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it." One of the things I've found that keeps us from talking to God about what we're struggling with and laying our temptations at God's feet is that we often feel our situation is too unique or too different from anything that anyone else is facing. We think that we are the special case. But as Paul writes here, no temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. Every single possible temptation that you could face has already been faced by other people in this world. God understands, and these temptations have been overcome by other people, by God, by leaning on God and asking him for the strength to get through these things. God doesn't want us to be so ashamed of our struggles that we don't talk to him about it, because he is the only way that we actually are going to get through it. He wants us to bring it to him. As Paul says, God is faithful. He will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with temptation, will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. There is something very interesting in these words. Pay attention here. Paul purposefully wrote that you may be able to bear it. He did not write that you may be able to never struggle with any temptation ever again. We live in a broken world. We will struggle with temptations. We will go through different seasons where we struggle with different things. If we live in the sinful world, which we do, we are guaranteed to face temptations. When we go to heaven, that's a different story. We won't struggle with temptation there. But for now, we will face various temptations in our daily lives. The great thing is that Paul reminds us we don't need to face these struggles alone. In fact, we shouldn't. God will give us the strength we need to face these struggles. For example, if we struggle with idolizing success and achievements, specifically our grades, unfortunately, God can't take tests and exams away. We can't remove that from our lives. They will still be there, and we'll still have the urge to place significant importance in what our grades are and the marks that we get on that test. The difference is, if we hand it over to God and say, God, please help me to not feel defined by my grades. Please help me to not place unnecessary importance on getting very high marks. That's when God will give us the strength to handle these things. I'm going to go forward a little bit to verse 23 to 24. And it says, "All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but not all things edify. Let no one seek his own, but each one the other's well-being. As Christians, there are things we know are wrong, and certain things that we can clearly see, ooh, okay, that's definitely idolizing. Like if somebody has crystals, and they believe that these crystals have special abilities, that's clearly idolization. But there's other things, as I said before, that are sneaky. Things that we think, meh, it's fine, it's no big deal that I'm doing that. It's not idolization, it's just something that I worry about, and something that I do think about a lot, and I kind of do care about a lot. But it's no big deal. We need to bring these things to God too. And I know some of you may be thinking, Caitlin, it's really not that deep, but it actually is. So to close off, I urge you today to, I'm calling it homework, but it's not really homework. So firstly, I urge you to really reflect and think about the things that you care about a little bit too much in your life, the things that you idolize. Don't be ashamed of these things. And don't feel like you can't talk to God about it, because you definitely can, and you should. And finally, surrender these things to God and pray that God will help you be able to bear